That's fine. There's a video I show in my physio psych course that's this guy with this crazy French accent. He's and the whole time it's like, okay, I speak French accent. Growing up in Vermont, you learn to speak French accent because everybody from Canada that lives just north speaks French. And that you can drink at 18 in Canada. Yeah. Moving on. So, luckily I wasn't the drinky person, but my friends liked to go drinking, so I would drive them up there and goof around in Montreal all day, and they'd get all drunk, and then they'd throw up in my car on the way home. Good times. But it's colder than Mexico. Okay, so this one, and this one, Rebecca Sachs, How Our Brains Make Moral Judgments, Unlocking Our Humanity. Basically the same experiment of making moral judgments was the babies stuffed in the MRIs, fMRI. Getting your baby to stuff in an MRI is really tricky. Getting a normal person to sit still in an MRI is extremely tricky. Were they able to get the dogs to do it? Yes. And that's what's great, is that dogs are very easy to train because treats. They're very simply motivated. But anybody get the point of do the dogs really love you? Wait, there's a difference. Some dogs, when their owners gave them the yay sign, yes, you get hot dogs, their dogs went, yes! And then other dogs, when somebody else gave the sign, then so it's when their owners, when their person rewarded them, it was a better reward than when some stranger rewarded them. So does their owners, according to the data, have meaning? Except for his dog didn't love it. That's okay. Well, and it's funny because our little fluffy dog, Nani in her infinite fluffiness, she's actually on the borderline of stinky right now. She needs to go back to the groomers again. But you can take a dog out of the junkyard, but you can't take the junkyard out of the dog. And so when you have a little fluffy dog she was a rescue. She was on the streets in Mexico, and they brought her over here, and we adopted her and spent money. I think they're just breeding them, messing them up, and then sending them north because all of our neighbors did the same thing, and remarkably, they all look the same. Yeah, anyway, one of my friends works at the Humane Society, and she goes down and treats dogs that they find in Mexico, and they find a lot of dogs that are being bred to be brought across to be sold. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, especially little white fluffy dogs. And I started going down a thread on Instagram of Pomeranian, teacup Pomeranians. My neighbors have a shit rain, a Pomeranian Shih Tzu mix. We call it a shit rain because it's funny. Morning. And it's psychotically fluffy. Like insanely, looks like a stuffed animal fluffy. Okay, so our little fluffy dog really likes me and likes Grandpa a lot too. When we first got the dog, she didn't want anything to do with me. She didn't want anything to do with my wife. She just hung out with my daughter. She was stuck to my daughter, slept in my daughter's room, peed in my daughter's room, but didn't want anything to do with me, my wife, or the boy, my son. But over time, who's the one who took the dog for walks and brushed the dog and fed the dog? Me. So I became associated with the rewards. She did not poo for about 10 days when we first got her. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't go to the bathroom. She did pee a lot in my daughter's room. She had a nice rub. Okay, we didn't know she was peeing because the little dog pees a little bit, and you don't really notice for a few days. Like, what is that? Oh, you turn the rug over. Anyway, but after a course of about 6 weeks, we finally got her to use the bathroom outside. She was never an inside dog, so she had no idea where to go to the bathroom. And then she had what's called nervous urination, which is she pees when she gets nervous. And so she's in a strange house, in a strange place, nobody speaks Spanish, and okay, a neighbor speaks Spanish, and she'd talk to the dog in Spanish. The dog would go crazy and be all happy. She looks at us like, what are you saying? Okay, so, good morning. Anyway, so by over 6 weeks, though, what happened? She started realizing I'm the one who feeds her, I'm the one who's brushing her, I'm the one who is taking care of her, doing all the mom things for her. So eventually she starts hanging out with me. My daughter just likes to play with her. My daughter likes to pick at her eyeball goo and pick burrs out of her fur. She's pretty much a primate, grooming the poor dog. The dog goes, I don't like you, I like Dad. And then eventually the dog really likes me and my son, and my wife and my daughter, she doesn't really give much mind to. She's coming around to my wife the more my wife is home. My wife's not at home as much as I am. But we've had her for 6 years now, I think. 5 years, 6 years. And she is fully, I was snoring badly because of my cold. So as soon as I start snoring, I get up and go sleep on the couch because, I don't want to if I'm miserable, I don't want to keep my wife awake. Yeah. It's really selfish because I'll get every 2 minutes. You're snoring. You're snoring. And my wife's strong, so it's not fun. Anyway, yeah, she just kettlebells with me. So as soon as I go fall asleep on the couch, who's right between my feet? The dog, yeah. So my hips all cramped up, and I won't, roll over because the dog's there, and I don't want to mess her up and she's fluffy. Okay, so we reciprocate a lot of love for the dog. So you think the dog learns that? Yes. And the dog really does learn that reciprocal stimulus. Because I drew my little mind and perspective here. We draw conclusions, right? This is what the whole point of the mind is. We draw conclusions. We look for cause and effect relationships. This is the question that you have. We look for cause and effect relationships. What affects the cause and effect relationships that we have? Your perspective. So your perspective is based on the data that you have collected. But it's also, I drew these three little people. Hey, look at that. Lose weight now. I hate those guys. What about, and then, so people put in these hypotheses into your perspective. Does that change your conclusion? Sometimes. This is a problem with trying to study psychology. People prime. We'll talk about priming again today with the brain. Because we can measure priming in the brain. That's what they're doing with how do our brains make moral judgments, and how do our dogs love us, and what is a baby actually feeling when it looks at its mom? How do we know that the baby likes something? They stare at it and even get a sip of tea, okay? They stare at it. And so the longer they stare at something, we assume that they like it. But if I activate the brain, if I find the part of the brain that when you eat a hot dog, your brain lights up, yay! If you're a dog, a greasy hot dog is a very good thing. Ever since my son we got him a Costco hot dog when he was little, and on the way home, the stomach flu erupted. And so it's like, there's a hot dog smell in the car, followed by horror. We actually threw away his car seat after that and just bought another one. It was just, we have to be driving by, and a really nice car seat was at a garage sale. We stopped to look at the car seat. When I went to get him out, it was all just everywhere. We got a new car seat. Good Britex. Nice work. Anyway, I just threw the other one away. But that hot dog from Costco, just the smell of it now. Ugh. So every time someone says hot dog, not puke, the other end. Oh, yeah. Okay, so can I find disgust in the brain? Yeah, there's a part of the brain called the insula that when you stimulate the insula to produce this hormone, this emotion of disgust lights up. And if I light that up, it changes the way you taste something. You're crunching along, you're eating your oatmeal and you crunch. Should you crunch an oatmeal? I didn't put anything crunchy in there. Immediately, as soon as you get the wrong texture, you're eating a piece of meat and you get a hard piece. Some people immediately go, ugh. If you're eating something crunchy and it goes squish. You get the worm in the sunflower seed. Yeah, you ever I got a burnt one? That's a worm. That's a worm. They're little mealy moths lay eggs. Sorry, excellent this stuff face. I wish I had a picture of that. Okay, we were at the Wild Animal Park. We're standing in line for the butterfly exhibit, which when the kids were little, we used to love going to that. We always had zoo passes. And they're standing in line, they're walking down the line with roasted crickets. Would you like a roasted cricket? And my son goes, I dare you. I'm like, you don't have to dare me, I'll do it anyway. And so I eat it, and I'm like, it tastes just like one of those bad sunflower seeds. And all of a sudden, click, oh no. So next time you look at sunflower seeds, you find one little hole in it, you open it up. But they're roasted. Good protein. About the same as the sunflower seed, actually. It's about that important. Okay. Significantly less water to produce. Yeah. Well, okay. Is it possible to reprogram the brain? Totally easily. You have to learn. You have to learn. You have to add new data points. By adding new data points, what does it do to your conclusion? Yeah. So if you understand a lot more other things, all of a sudden your conclusion will change because you're adding data points. So you wanted to see the results of the survey here. I just wanted to put this up for you because I think it's cool. It's a big program. It takes a second to load. Please. Any day now. I'll click it again, and it'll load twice. Yeah, come on, you can do it. While it's recording, this program uses a tremendous amount of processor power. It shouldn't, but it does. Okay, so here's what the data looks like, just in case you care. I didn't code everything in here, but this is what the data looks like in the spreadsheet. This is a program called SPSS, Statistical Package for the Social Sciences. Produced by IBM, it costs us about $2,500 a semester to use this software. That's how much for the campus lab to use it, but all the math courses use it now too, so it's almost getting worth it. But what he can do is, let me open up the output here. I made all these graphs the other day. Wait for it. Wait for it. Are you done? SPSS does not like the touchscreen. It was invented back on the old mainframe days. So you can run all sorts of basic different types of statistics on this thing. So first of all, we can look at culture. What are the cultures at Cuyamaca College? Yeah, 33% Middle Eastern, and I combined the other Middle Eastern and Chaldean. I just dumped them together. White, Hispanic, Latino. Okay, and so eventually I recoded all this stuff and then put it down through it. But I'm just going to go right to the end here because it's interesting. I made some graphs down at the bottom. Here we go. So I changed the codes a little bit. Okay, so this is the first, when you first look at it, the bike was doing something wrong. Okay, so white, out of 10, 0 out of 10, the average was 4. So less than 5, so. And then what was for Middle Eastern? 5. Not that big of a difference, right? Hispanic Latino was 3.5-ish. Okay? So that was, now after the, oops, sorry. Oh, that's age. Where'd it go? I scrolled somewhere. There they are. Okay. Almost done. Okay, so here's after we see the cray-cray bites list. What do you notice? Well, it went up. Definitely went from 4 for whites to almost 7.5. Hispanic Latinos went from 3.5 to 8. But look at Middle Eastern. It went up quite a bit. Stronger. Okay? And then look at what happens after we see the car crash, after we see the crappy lady in the car. Methamphetamines and alcohol. Look who still stays high. The Middle Eastern, and now this is not just one person, this is 65 people, the average of 65 people. Whenever you're trying to parameterize something, you look at the averages of a group of people. When you have 65 people, is that a pretty good sample? Yeah, it's a pretty good sample. So something's interesting is that did the Middle Eastern people forget the crazy bicyclists? No. Even though the person was drunk, the crazy bicyclist seemed to stick longer in the Middle Eastern mind. Now, we'd have to do a lot more research to figure out exactly who these people are, how would we describe these people, because just calling someone Middle Eastern is relatively offensive. Because that could be Spain all the way around to, all the way around to Istanbul and trying to go all the way to the end of, what's on the other side of Spain? Wait for it. The other side, down across the sea. What? Morocco. Thank you. I couldn't think of Morocco. Sorry. But is Spain and Morocco the same? No, but they're only a couple miles apart. And they've traded back and forth through history. So they have similarities. And so it would be better to say Mediterranean versus North African versus, you could see, but what would happen if we try to be more culturally specific? Our sample size would shrink. And so again, this is not a great experiment. This is not the truth in the world. This is just actually doing this for my statistics students to actually analyze real data. But so when we look at the next thing down here, just to keep the same thing going, here is the driver was doing something wrong. Also high. Good morning. Okay. Look at how Latin America changed. They're at 7.2 and all the way down to 3.75 after seeing the crazy cyclists video. But look at the Middle Eastern after seeing the person was drunk. So they actually stayed about the same, about 7. Well, look at the white American. It's really high. So you start to notice that the way we coded for American, unquote, was no cultural identification. America removes culture. We eat fast food, become squishy, become American. Yeah. So there's no significant results in religion. So when you code for religion, there's no differences between Catholic, Christian, non-religion, or anything else. So I only made things where there were statistical differences, where the stats showed differences. But how come there's no real difference in religion? Yeah, we don't have a good sample, it's called a sample frame in statistics. We need to have a good representative sample to collect data. And Cuyamaca is a relatively small population. Majority of people at Cuyamaca are either Christian or Catholic. And so, because the majority fit that one demographic, it's hard to break apart. So, what's interesting is that even though we can try to draw conclusions, we can try to say, oh, there's a cause and effect relationship. Is it really real? Well, so if something depends on your point of view, it's not real. It's an opinion. So we need to use critical thinking. The whole basis of the scientific method, the whole point of what James Randi and Michael Strimmer, the whole point of it is that you have to use critical thinking to form answers, to come to conclusions. Why don't most people use critical thinking? It's hard. Because if this person is like, well, if I need to lose some weight, I mean, because I'm probably about 245 right now. I'm not going to get on the scale because I don't want to see what it says. Denial, good defense mechanism. But when the reason for I want to lose weight because my diabetes, if I'm too heavy, my blood sugar stays high too much, which is bad for you in the long run. It won't hurt me right now, but it will hurt me later. I do not want to have those big swollen feet or scaly skin. Yeah, you see that guy walking the beach with flip-flops, those big fat diabetes. Don't want that. Okay, so how do I lose weight? Well, if I just work out, what happens? I build muscle, but I stay the same weight. That does help with your blood sugar. Yeah, I need to eat healthy, or stop eating unhealthy would be more helpful. I mean, even though I eat healthy, I just eat too much. So I have to, what if I just stop eating completely? That's not good easy. You have to use good critical thinking. You have to use a good critical thinking idea. You have to use what works. And sadly, the only thing that works is protein. The only thing that really works over the long run. Carol LeBeau, you remember who she was? She was one of the newscasters on Channel 10 forever. She did a study she was big into health and women's issues, and good friends with one of our history professors. She did a study over 10 years of looking at all these fad diets. Anybody know which diet works the best? The one you stick to. If you like eating meat and sausages, the paleo is awesome. Yes, because you can eat all the crap that you like and be happy. For me, losing weight is very simply, I actually just keep track of what I'm eating. I don't have my phone today, but I have an app on my phone where everything you stuff in your cake hole, you type in. It works really well. Because some days I'll eat 3,000, 3,500 calories. Other days I'll eat 1,600. Is that a good idea? No, if you eat about the same, if I eat right around 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories a day, I will slowly lose weight. If I eat more than 2,500 calories, what happens? You gain weight. Objective, empirical, it's super easy to pay attention to. Counts carbs, counts grams of fat, counts everything. And especially if you eat a lot of the same foods like I do all the time, you just type in, I ate this, send. And it records, and it's really cool. It's called Calorie Tracker. It's annoying, and because when you're sneaking a piece of fudge out of the Christmas thing, you have to type it in. Depending on, should you think about food? Let's go back to the dog. The dog forms a relationship with the person. What is rewarding about food? Okay, so if you're going for the tasty, I generally try to eat as food as calories, because I need calories to live, and I have to choose my calories wisely. If I eat because things are tasty, what do you tend to eat? Sugar, fat, and salt. Potato chips. Sugar, fat, and salt. Sugar is the carbs, salt, good, fat, good. And your brain goes, that's a perfect food, that is tasty. But I don't eat potatoes, I actually had a little potato the other night because I made chicken soup and it had potatoes in it. And I ate one or two little red potatoes, but normally I would pick them out and not eat them, but are they tasty? Yes, stupid potatoes. I don't eat white rice because it's a lot of low glycemic, instant digestible carbs. So what I find yummy is different than what other people find yummy. Stinky fish? Good. We had salmon last night. Yeah, we made salmon tacos. And I love eating the salmon skin. That's like my favorite part. It's all good. Sorry. Okay. But my problem is because I enjoy foods, why do I eat too much? Because I enjoy it, and therefore the reward value of eating it is greater than the punishment. When's the punishment of eating something? Yeah, when you muffin top. Okay. Luckily, I still have enough muscle mass, but still, it's not good. Okay. So the idea of trying to figure out this critical thinking, this is what we're doing all semester. That's the point of this whole class, is to take apart critical thinking and look at it from a psychological perspective. That's why I think it's really fun to start looking at the brain. This one's really fun because it talks a lot about the history of psych. And there's a lot of the history of what psychology is. And sadly, why is there so many misconceptions about psychology? Most psychologists come up with crap, and then they try and test it. Because of stupid Mesmer. It comes down to, Mesmer was the guy that started hypnotizing people for sideshows in the 1700s, or maybe even later than that, I can't remember. Okay, a long time ago. And by working at the circus and hypnotizing someone, be careful, Mesmer will steal your soul. That was what so your mind was your soul, which was a religious thing, and therefore if you went out of your mind, that means that a devil had sneaking into your soul and taken possession of your soul, and you'd have to go through an exorcism to get your soul back from the devil. How do you exorcise somebody? Well, you torture them. And when they scream, that's the devil coming out. If you burn the witch and she screams, she's obviously a witch because she doesn't want to die. Well, that's the whole drowning thing. If they used to hold them in the water till they drowned, and if they didn't drown, it was obvious that they were a witch. Yeah. Is that critical thinking? No. Burn her! She's a witch! Okay. She turned me into a newt. Okay. I don't have my phone. I was going to ask it how I can tell if she's a witch. Build a bridge out of it. Okay. No Monty Python fans? No? Monty Python? How do you know if she's a witch? Build a bridge out of her? Burn her! Okay. Too old. Okay. So, I want to talk about this. Wow, good one. Okay, so what is this? I know that, but what is it? Okay, nervous cells, good. How many nervous cells are in this thing? 86. Lots. If you Google how many brain cells do we have, there's a great TED Talk. So what the lady does is she puts the brain into a blender, adds a chemical that breaks down the cell walls, the detergent, and then counts the nuclei. Every cell has a nuclei, and therefore she can count the nuclei, right? And so she puts it in a blender, makes a soup out of it, syringes 5 milliliters out, squirts 5 milliliters onto a slide, counts the 5 milliliters, multiplies that times the volume, and you get number 86 billion. She did this multiple samples, multiple times, and actually worked pretty well. A rat brain has significantly fewer neurons. A mouse brain, which I'll show you a video of in just a minute, has significantly fewer neurons. What do all the neurons do, though? Yeah, so electrical. Electrochemical messages, okay? So all the brain cells, every single brain cell sends an electrical spike. That's why they're called nerve cells. Okay, you know what they feel like. Everybody's banged their elbow on something and found the radial ulnar nerve. It's awesome. Your whole hand tingles and goes numb. Anybody an arm sleeper? Yeah, okay. When you fall asleep on your arm and it's all numb, yeah. You're pinching the nerve. Either pinching the nerve in your shoulder or pinching the nerve in your hand. Some people, it's just blood flow. How do you tell the difference between a nerve versus blood flow? Yeah, blood flow, you can feel it come back. And then you get all the prickles. That's blood flow. Nerve means it just goes numb, and then when you move it around, all of a sudden it comes back and it doesn't hurt. You just pinch the nerve. Say it again? Messages. Thank you. Okay, is that the same question? Okay. to read my scribble, will you? Okay. Thank you for asking, though. Electrical chemical messages. So where are the electrical messages, though? That's where not the synapse. The synapse is the chemical messages. So the electrical messages are on the axons. What are the axons covered with? Myelin, which is fat, which is what color? White. So when we look at the brain, wherever we see white sections, that is axons. That's the electrical activity. Whenever we see gray, that is the chemical messages. So when I look at the surface of this, what color is it mostly? Gray. Most of your surface of your brain is covered, I'm just going to draw it like this, is covered by dendrites. The entire surface of your brain is covered by dendrites. And notice how it's all folded. If I go back to here, gray matter. It's called gray matter, but that's where the actual cell bodies and dendrites are. Yeah. So if I show you a picture of a manatee brain compared to a human brain, how many folds does a manatee brain have? 2. Technically 4, because it's got one in the middle, one here. The fold is here, so it's got one fold there and one fold in the top. So there's 4 chunks to the manatee brain. Does anybody ever go to SeaWorld a long time ago and watch some manatees? I'm very sad that the SeaWorld got rid of the manatees. But what do? They eat lettuce and float upside down and look at you. They're called sea cows because they eat lettuce. And they get hit by motorboats a lot. There's a motorboat. Oh! Ooh, thanks. Okay. Not exactly the most athletic. So, compared to their brains, how's our brain? Has a lot of folds. That's actually what makes our brain so unique. Our brain has way more surface area, way more neuronal connections than any other species. That's what makes our brains unique. So us compared to, like, say, a big lowland gorilla. Lowland gorilla weighs about the same that I do, but my brain is significantly larger than a lowland gorilla. A lowland gorilla has one problem that humans don't. What is the problem that gorillas have? They eat leaves all day. Damn vegetarians. But do they process their food at all? Well, they chew it. They eat raw. They're raw food vegans. In order for them to maintain their body mass, their big, strong body mass, they have to eat 7-8 hours straight every day. Yeah. Crunch, 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 crunch. And because they have to eat so much all the time, they don't have the affordance of having a very large brain. Humans have these really cool opposable thumbs. Well, so do gorillas. It works, but they don't have something, they can't think very far into the future. Humans can cook their food. As soon as you cook a piece of meat versus eat a piece of raw meat, what do you get out of it? More nutrients per pound of meat. And as soon as you if you take milk and make cheese out of it, you get significantly more nutrients per pound of milk if you make cheese out of it. So the more you process something, the more nutrients you get out. We call it nutrient-rich food. Look at a McDonald's hamburger. Okay, a very small little McDonald's hamburger has about 300 calories in it. It's about this big. That's very impressive. You need 4 of those a day and you can live. Well, sort of. You have enough calories to live, but good morning. There's not enough nutrients to live based on that. It's enough calories, but not enough nutrients. It's okay. And so the thing that we do is by processing our food, we have the luxury of a big brain. The problem is we process our food, and we also, now that we have a big brain, we can fuel it with our processed food, but what do we like as a creature? Processed food. The more processed the food, the more humans seem to enjoy it. How do we know this? Whenever McDonald's goes to any new country, what happens to the body weight of that new country? Well, heart disease doubled in South Africa when Burger King and McDonald's went there. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to go back here again. Sure. Well, is that folded? It looks. That's actually relatively close. Okay? So, because we have such a large brain, in order for it to, let me go back, let me scroll down a little bit, you can see, in order for it to fit inside of our skulls, you can see that the surface is convoluted all the way through until you're not even cutting brain tissue until you all the way get down to the center. And down in the center, there's a huge white extension cord that goes between left and right side. Okay? This is actually instructions on how to use the podium. Oh, defender of chair. Nice job. Okay. Let's get on. Okay. The left and right side are completely separate. They're completely independent, except for this big connector in between the two. This big connector in between the two is white. So what runs back and forth through this big connector? Electricity. Electricity is running constantly back and forth. Do you use one side or the other? No, you always use both unless this part is malfunctioning. A lot of people with autism have very small connections. They're called the corpus callosum. Have small connections between left and right side. Somebody with like my daughter with dyslexia has different size chunks of their corpus callosum in different areas. Leonardo da Vinci was thought to have had a severed corpus callosum. I mean, he was born without it. Because Leonardo da Vinci could write with one hand and do math with the other hand simultaneously. Yeah, it's like he would write forwards with one hand and backwards with the other hand, different things. So why do you think he thought of stuff that was so crazy? He had two selves. He had two separate selves. So he could bounce ideas off himself. Yeah, probably not the most normal of dudes that you've ever met. Here's another slice. This one really shows, you can really see the surface much better on this one. So you notice all the white is in where? Inside. Look at these areas. This is called the cerebellum, which I'll go through and label the parts here in a little bit. This is the cerebellum. This is where your motor skills, this is timing of behavior comes from. Timing. So why do you think there's so much gray matter in the timing of things? There's a lot of messages going through, and a lot of messages interacting, synapsing with a lot of other messages. Because whenever you time something, you have to take motor output from one set of muscles, motor output from the other set of muscles, run them across each other so that they balance so things move smoothly. I had a wonderful student named Rosalind Johnson. Rosalind had cerebral palsy. She was born with a very bad cerebellum. Her mom used cocaine when she was in utero. And so Rosalind was in my class. She was associate student president that year. When she talked, everybody had to carry a little rag because she would talk like this. Why would she talk funny? Her mouth wouldn't connect right with the sounds coming out. She knew what she wanted to say, but the timing wasn't right. So sometimes she'd go, spit would go everywhere. Good morning. Okay, when she walked like this. Why did she walk like our man, if you're a Night of the Dead fan? There's no conscious communication. All of her communication with her motor skills is conscious, which takes too long. So we were walking across campus. I saw her at San Diego State probably 7 years ago now. And she's walking. She's pretty easy to see walking because she had her knees fused so she could balance. And so she had to gimp along with her knees fused. And she learned to walk without her crutches, but it was very flaily. But she didn't want to have her crutches because they hurt her arm. So I see her on campus, so I'm walking next to her like this. She's getting soft and she's laughing so hard. Somebody said, "That's really mean." It's not mean. She knows she walks funny. But anyway, so when she graduated here, I got her a yo-yo. She goes, "That's the meanest thing anybody's ever done to me." Because how's playing with a yo-yo with a cerebellum? She actually was able to get it to sleep and then come back up. That's about as far as she got. But trying to do any of the two-handed tricks, that's really complicated. Anyway, so the cool thing about, I have a picture of Roz somewhere in my computer. The cool thing about how this works, it's all about the connections that form. Humans can form more connections than any other animal. Because we have so many neurons, we can connect so many other neurons, we're more complicated than any other neuron. Why is that important? To make conclusions. Do you think a manatee makes good conclusions?
No.
2 folds? 1 fold, technically? No, it doesn't I don't think a manatee has very abstract reasoning or much abstract thought because it doesn't have a lot of neurons. It doesn't have the capability of forming complex ideas that as we understand them. I mean, maybe manatee life is much more enriching than we think. Okay, go ahead first. I should know that. I did know that at one point in my life, but I have a book that tells me and I don't know. So every one of these folds has a name. And everybody's brain's different. And when I took a neuroanatomy class, 1991, I knew that. But do you need to know that? Unless you're taking the neuroanatomy class, then you need to know it. Because they have like the exam is a brain with pins stuck in it, with little numbers on them. Yeah, and it's like, this one's called the Sylvanian fissure because it goes all the way down inside into the center. This is the central fissure goes down the middle. This is the motor fissure. And so there's these fissures are named. There's some that we talk about that they're important, but all the stupid little ones, auditory cortex is right here. But when you just look at the cerebellum, do you think it's possible to name all of them? They're named. A neuroanatomist named everything, but yeah. Ish. Because all of our brains have the same basic parts. Now, if you're born without a particular part, what do you think your brain does? It compensates for it. If we lose a limb, okay, this is where you feel your body right here. If you lose a limb, this right here is probably your hand or your face area. Everybody's a little bit different. But so if I lose a limb, does this part of the brain die? No, it turns out that this part of the brain reconnects. One of my students, Colleen, had her arm, she had lost her arm, actually this arm, because of cancer. She had a melanoma, so they cut off her arm. And so she just had from here up, just enough for her to hold her purse, is what she wanted, her enough arm to hold her purse. So, hold on for a sec. What happened is afterwards, after they removed her arm, her hand would hurt. Phantom limb pain. Why would her hand hurt? It's not the nerves are still connected, it's that the brain still has her hand in it. And because her brain still has her hand in it, her brain says, oh, my hand hurts. So when your hand hurts or your hand's asleep, what do? You shake it or rub it, or, if you bonk your head, to try to overstimulate the area, and then, it makes it go away. So she didn't have any feedback. Feedback, that's actually one of the key things here. One of the most important things about sensation perception is feedback. Okay. No, she had worse. She did not have a cerebellum. Her brain, so depending on the severity of cerebral palsy, it means that parts of the brain just didn't grow. Because I had one of my students named Ryan he was in my high school class. He had cerebral palsy. He couldn't walk. His deficit was so great that he had to be in a wheelchair, and he had a hard time moving his wheelchair even. But consciously, he was just as smart as any of the other freshmen at Ramona High School that year. And he had a hard time talking. I got to learn to speak his language because it's English, but it's no. He couldn't enunciate very well. but he got a 78% on their final exam in my earth science course, and half of the students failed. And I'm looking at him going, dude, guy in wheelchair just kicked your ass on this exam. You think he's putting in effort? And they're like, yeah. Are you? No. Okay. But, so, it's interesting. Some cerebral palsy, the deficits are so severe that the cognition's even disrupted. Because, I can't remember what, palsy means a part of the brain's part's not working. Has anybody seen have anybody seen a Bell's palsy? Where your face, yeah. Yeah, and it's really annoying, because the doctors go, well, you don't know what causes it. They give you anti-inflammatories and say it'll go away, and eventually it. Yeah, one of my students, Stephen Juarez, had it one semester, and he woke up in the morning. He's like, I'm having a stroke. Couldn't move his whole side of his face. But what it is, the nerves that go in for the back of his face, where they connect into your brain, for some reason, stop sending signals. So he can't move this whole side of his face. And it's like literally down an exact line. It's really creepy. Have you had it? Yeah. And when did you like do the... Right, did you put the pirate patch on? No. Yeah. Why would you give you shock? That's a perfect... Yeah. So your brain works on feedback. And if there's no motor signal, movement going out, and no sensation coming back, the brain goes, okay, fine, we'll do something else. And so what Stephen did is Stephen had a pirate patch. So we became Pirate Steve, which was funny if you've seen Dodgeball. But so Steve had the pirate patch on because his eye would get all dry. Because it was cool, when he blinks, he'd go like this. Your eye would roll up, and yeah, you'd have to constantly, yeah. But what's interesting about this is the brain runs by feedback. The brain runs by feedback. Okay, so what is feedback? Sensation perception is what is feedback in general? Ooh, careful with the word memory. Our brain produces behavior, and then you see a result of that behavior. So what does your brain do? Responds by changing the cause and changing the effect. So if you want to learn how to move, I want to teach someone here to do something stupid called a Turkish get-up. What's a Turkish get-up? Yeah, you basically lay down to stand up by holding a weight. And it's very simple. I can do a Turkish get down much easier because I'm standing already. But basically you hold the weight. Let's see, you gotta remember what foot to put back. That one. You put it back, you come back down, put your foot up, push back, then you go like this, and then you get back up. So it's cool. It's cool if you can do it with a barbell. I can't do it with a barbell. I've seen people do that, but or holding one of your workout partners. I've seen that as well. That's pretty cool, but I can't do that. I can do it holding my son, but he's small. But when you do a Turkish get-up, how do you know you're doing it right? Well, if you're holding a weight above your head, when it doesn't fall and kill you. Technically, it was invented to pick up a wounded soldier. In order to pick up a 200-pound person off the ground, you can't just bend over and pick them up because you will hurt yourself. But if you actually get up in a prescribed way, you can actually pick up something very heavy on your shoulder, not holding your hand up, but holding your hand over the person. And they're really cool if you do the running Turkish get-up, where you run and jump, scoop them up, and then roll out of it and then pick the carry. Yeah, don't try it though, because what ends up happening, you put your shoulder right into the person's stomach. Oh, sorry. Let's try that again. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, but we do, what it does is it's one of those things where it's a type of exercise that it's static strength, and it's more of balance and more of paying attention to where your body is in order for you to move and be functional. Because what it does is it provides a lot of feedback to where you have weaknesses, because it uses almost your whole body. And by finding where your body has weaknesses, then you can strengthen those weaknesses to compensate for your body moving. And it's a lot of the exercises that we do, like I did a bunch of squats this morning. I'm sick, so I didn't want to do heavy weight, so I did lightweight squats. And it's fun because you just squat down with a light weight and just hold it here. Why do you just sit in that squat? To activate all the different muscles. By like the 7th set, my knees weren't clicking. Yeah, that's right. I still got it. Okay. First couple really hurt. And it was like not much weight at all. It's terrible. Anyway, so I want you to think about this cause and effect relationship, and we're going to go through this and look at the feedback that this gives us. The feedback that this gives us. Remember, our brain is used to move us. Our brain is used so that we have behavior. Okay, so what we already talked about this part down here, the cerebellum. Sorry. What does the cerebellum do? I'm going to close this software real quick because it's going to suck down my RAM. Okay, so it doesn't control movements, it controls timing. I want you to notice that it's at the bottom of the brain. What hangs out down at the bottom down here? Spine. It's your spinal cord. What does your spinal cord do? Why do we have one? Transfers information, but yeah, reflexes. The spinal cord allows you to balance. If anybody's here ever hurt their spine, you realize how important it is. I ruptured a disc in my back years ago, and I don't suggest that. It was cool. I lost my left leg for a while. Just went numb. Like, oh no. So I'm like, I go to the, is it permanent? He goes, could be. Thanks. That's really reassuring. No, they injected some cortisone directly into the vertebrae and the gooey disc in between the vertebrae, which caused it to shrink. And as soon as they injected it in, my whole legs, I felt this cold go down my leg. That cold going down my leg was the nerve being relieved. And when the nerve relieved, was it cold in the room? Yeah, everybody's been in an operating room, hopefully not. But it's freezing in there. And all of a sudden, my leg felt nice and warm before because I wasn't feeling anything. But as soon as they injected the chemical, the anti-inflammatory into the disc shrank, and I could feel my leg getting cold. And it started here where the big nerves are, and as you get further down, the smaller and smaller nerves. So what I lost my knee-jerk reflex and my shin right here. No, I do now. But in the physical therapy is exactly what you just said, is I had to keep rubbing my shin and, like rubbing my calf like this and rubbing my shin to stimulate it. Because if I send information up, even though the nerve might be slightly damaged in my back, information is still being sent up, and my brain up here just goes, oh, okay, that's your shin now? Good. One of my students punched a window. Don't be drunk and punch windows. What happens when you punch windows? Well, you break your hand, A. B, if the window breaks, you cut yourself in your hand, and your hands are very delicate things. So he cut the meat between his thumb and his hand right here. That's not so much the tendon, that's easy to fix. There's a big-ass nerve that runs right across here. And that big nerve connects all of your fingers together. And so he cut that nerve. And so they sewed it back together, because they use super glue and they stick it back together, and the neurons go, that's fine, all good to go. Except, did they get the orientation right of that nerve? No, so like this finger was where this one was, and this finger was where this one was, so he couldn't move his hand because they weren't connected, all the wires weren't in the right place. It's like an old English vehicle. You open the thing and it's like this big bundle of wires. Crap. Okay, so what he had to do is he sat there and moved his, bent his finger and rubbed his hand, bent his finger, rubbed his hand. They had him put hot on one finger, cold on one finger, just all sorts of different physical therapy stuff. retraining the brain to pay attention to the right nerves. Is your brain easy to retrain? Bless you. Yes. First, I had to learn the names of the colors you gave them. But that's it. I mean, that's all it is. It's just training. And once you retrain it, what happens? It works. Now, what if you have a really severe damage? I had a student last semester that was in a motorcycle crash and basically tore his lower part of his leg off, and they sewed it back on, but does he still walk with a limp? Yeah, because he can't, they just can't repair everything, and it can't fix everything. But it's amazing how much stuff you can fix. Okay, so let me change colors here. Okay, so we'll get to the lower part of the brain once we take it apart, called the brainstem. I'll diagram the brainstem on the next slide where you can actually see the brainstem. But that's all your basic things like life reflexes like breathing and sleeping and stuff. Okay, let's focus on the top part of the brain though. Let's look back here. This is one of the most, look how much more wrinkled this part is than the other parts. This is called the occipital lobe. This is where you see. This is where you see, and I think I can actually color this in. Bless you. This is where you see. What do you actually see back here? Well, your lens in your eyes flip everything over, but you kind of don't notice because your brain doesn't really perceive reality. It perceives the cause and effect relationships you have in the world. My dad was a computer scientist, but he started working on computers when all they had were terminals and keyboards and punch cards and things. So when he got his computer delivered, his mouse was sitting like this on the left-hand side of his keyboard and was sitting there like that. So how did he use it? Sitting on the left side of his keyboard upside down. Did he notice that he was doing anything wrong? No, because he'd never used one before, and he goes, oh, this is how it works. It's like anybody that goes from Mac to PC and they have the stupid opposite scrolling. Well, all you have to do is think of are you pushing it up or pulling it down? Like this one is logical versus Australian scrolling is what they call the other one. But for people that are used to a Mac, is it obvious which way to scroll? Yeah. Versus a PC, it's obvious which way to scroll because it's just whatever you first learn becomes habit. It's the cause and effect that you expect based on the sensory input coming in. So your visual systems learn to see basically how you think that you see. If everybody here has about astigmatism, hey, astigmatism is the lens focuses on the side of your eye. If you've never ever worn glasses, you don't know what it's like to see. Until you put glasses on, then you realize how much you can't see. But can you function pretty well without glasses on? No, there are consequences. I have many scars from mountain biking. Okay, so what was your question? So yeah, there's a bunch of optical illusions. It's a way to look at this. Can I make you see things that aren't really there? Yeah, I can make you look at, there's a bunch of optical illusions. I'll play some videos here as my voice gives out there in the other class. But there's a bunch of optical illusions that trick your occipital lobe to perceive something that really isn't there. And when you see something that really isn't there, is it really there? Anybody seen 3D pictures? Are they really 3D? No, they're flat, but they appear to be 3D because the lines are drawn so that your occipital lobe sees what the person wants you to see. And so even the nature of our reality is different. If you put on one lens that's yellow and one lens that's red in glasses, after 2 minutes, you can't tell that you're wearing different colored lenses. Your brain figures it out. It says, oh, that's gray. Even though it's yellow, even though it's red, your brain goes, whoop, okay, it's still gray. Yeah, it's really, and so they've done this before where they flipped the prism glasses. I think we talked about this in the first class. Yeah, they put the world upside down for these kittens. The kittens didn't notice. And then the experimenters did it, and what happened? They got really bad headaches until they stopped noticing. It's the same thing as if you're sitting here with virtual reality on your computer and everything's upside down. After a few minutes, everything's right. Or you're lying on the couch looking at the TV upside down, you can watch it perfectly normal without it seeming like it's upside down. You should try it sometime. It's fun. Okay, that's like my son. I fell off the couch. I really didn't want to get back up. He's watching TV upside down. Like, really? Yeah. Okay. So let me go purple here. This part back here is where you feel your body, called the parietal lobe. It's interesting how the red shows up on the black, but the purple does not show up on the black as well. Why doesn't the purple show up on the black as well as the red? Because the purple has more black in it, and your brain can't decide where the edges of the purple are. The red has less black in it, and you can decide where the edges of the red are. Because your brain looks at the contrast, the feedback it gets from the sides of things. Anyway, so this is your parietal lobe is where you feel your body. Right here is your sensory cortex. So when I show you a little video in a little bit here, when they zap someone in the sensory cortex, what happens? No, they don't move, they don't move, they feel something. Because it's where your body feels. The motor cortex is right here. The motor cortex is right here. And that's a part of the frontal lobe. I'm going to draw the edge of the frontal lobe all the way around here. Which lobe is the biggest in humans? Frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is behavior. Humans are really good at behavior. This is why training your 2-year-old is difficult. Are there lots of things that a 2-year-old can do? Yes, that's a problem. It's nice training a dog. There's not a lot of things a dog can do. They don't have that many behaviors in their behavioral repertoire in which to choose from. Humans, however, seem to have an infinite number of behaviors in their behavioral repertoire. We can learn almost all of our behaviors. Are there any instinctual behaviors that humans are born with? Breathing's a reflex, not a behavior. The only one that is really close, if you go back to one of the videos, is emotions. But then I sent the second video out during the announcements because I get stuck in the TED rabbit hole all the time. And there's a whole bunch of videos about language and how language is evolving. That's the rabbit hole I went down on Friday. So, but one of them was that there's a lot of emotions that they describe in other countries that we don't have here. And it's like, well, wait, do we have that emotion or we just don't have a word for it? Yeah. I like the when it's cold and raining and you're sitting at home with friends. Or whatever that was. I'm like, no, that's cool. I want to use that in conversation. Can't remember what it is now, though. Anyway, so what does your motor cortex do? Well, how? It's not reacting. Reacting is really complicated because we've already gotten what you see over here, what you feel over here. This is where you're here, by the way. But your motor cortex is, I'll write it in white over here. I'll write it in black. Is a twitch. Yeah. So the motor cortex, they put the hand and they go click, 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 and our hand twitches. The motor cortex causes muscle twitching. Okay? Causes muscles to twitch. So every single muscle in your body that is under conscious control has a neuron in the motor cortex associated with it. Okay, so if you want to move you think you have a lot of muscles in your hands? Yeah, tons of muscles. Not in your hands, technically. Most of them are in your forearm, but whatever. Okay, but can you do lots of variable movements with your hands? Yeah, so your motor cortex is a huge chunk dedicated to its hands. A huge sensory chunk dedicated to your hands. Your tongue and your mouth have a tremendous amount of movement potential. So they have a huge amount of motor cortex. What about your legs? You only have 4 major muscles in your legs. Do you need a lot of neurons to activate your legs? No. And most of walking is spinal cord. I just lean forward and what automatically happens? You step. And a lot of babies, if you hold them up when they're phase, you lean them forward and what do? Their leg comes up. It's like, that's your spinal cord. If I put pressure on my patellar tendon, on the patellar tendon, what happens to the quadricep? Yeah, I'm not flexing at all. It's just my spinal cord reflexes take care of that sort of thing. If you put your fingers in a baby's palms, what do? They squeeze, and they squeeze hard enough that you can actually pick them up. You do it over with a spotter, don't just pick them up. But you can easily pick them up off the ground by their grip reflex. And this is probably an arboreal, humans probably came from arboreal sources, because when you get scared, what do humans do? Yeah, but you immediately brace. You brace. And a lot of humans will flail, babies especially, will flail their arms out. Ha! Okay? And when they flail, that's their way of catching branches around them if they're falling. The easiest way to scare a baby? Please don't do that unless it's not yours and you can do it all you want. Now, so if the motor cortex is just twitches, how do we get a behavior then? Lots of twitches. And you have something called motor program. Now, motor programs come from, I'm not going to make you memorize the parts of the frontal lobe. My physical class has to, but it's called the premotor cortex. Premotor cortex plans a sequence of muscle contractions to form a behavior. Plans. So like when I was doing with the offspring, what am I going to get today here? Oh, this sucks. This is a good one. This is a really good yo-yo and it's really cheap. It's only like $12 and it's like super nice. Even Barry's gonna want that on his own. Come on, bad dog. Okay, so in order to do this, is this the same as my other one? So what does it require? It requires different programs in order to play with it. And because it requires slightly different programs, I have to adjust just a little bit every time. It's not going to be as perfect as the purple one I use the most because it's the most rewarding because it's kind of noisy. But it's one of those things that in order to adjust the particular program, you have to know what you're going to do. If you know what you're going to do, is it easy to perform the next behavior? Yeah. Watch how a 2-year-old walks. When they first learn to walk, what do? So we have in our house, there's a great chicane that goes from our house was built in the 1940s, and so almost all the houses in the neighborhood have the same layout. Bedroom, bathroom. So if you go in from the living room, if you lean one way, you go to one bedroom. If you lean the other way, you go to a second bedroom. If you lean really hard, you make it into a bathroom. So my son would just go, and just go full speed straight towards the wall. And at the last minute, just start leaning and try to careen into his bedroom. And it's funny because when you'd watch him, I go, hey, go get something out of your room. He'd go, ah, and he'd just go for it. How is he running? Spinal reflexes. Where is his conscious control over? Lean. But sadly, that's what a lot of running is. Why do we make, I'm really bad at it, but why do we make all of our track athletes do stupid running drills? I can't do it very well. Where you do pawing. Practice pawing at the ground as you're running. Learn control how to properly activate your muscles at the proper time. Once you practice it 1,000,000 times, what happens when you're actually running? They activate in the proper sequence because the reflex has been trained and the cerebellum knows when to perform it. And that's why I like just playing with the yo-yo, it's so second nature. It really doesn't require a lot of thought. This one doesn't come up right when you want it to, so it's always a little bit nervous. Kind of like it. But hold on, I'm stuck on my finger. Yes. Almost over. I'm supposed to flip it up and catch it in my pocket. My pocket's locked. Missed. I don't play basketball very well either. Okay, so you don't do that with the aluminum one, by the way. So if you have a series of motor programs, the motor program goes into to activate the muscle twitches in the right sequence so that the behavior comes out. Okay? So the temporal lobe on the side here, we'll get to this in just one more second. The temporal lobe on the side is where you hear. This is where language is. This becomes complicated. This is where emotions are. So far, so good? Okay, so all this is on the recording. So if you watch the recording, you can get all this back. So this part in the front, we'll change to an extra special orange color, is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex. Part of the frontal lobe, so it's involved with behavior, and this is planning. So our prefrontal cortex is planning what program to activate. As you get older, what happens with your ability to plan? Gets better. How far in advance can we plan? Years in advance. Like when I turn 50, one of my goals is we're going to go to Moab and go mountain biking. That's one of my plans. I also want to build my own bicycle at some point. I want to learn how to weld and build my own bicycle. Probably not by 50, but probably by 90. I should be able to read it. Anyway. Stupid children require funding for college. Okay. But I can plan our trip. My wife and I were just talking. My daughter's got a volleyball tournament, Martin Luther King weekend. She goes, you and Caleb should grab one of his friends and go skiing for the weekend. Challenge accepted. I told my son, hey, we can go skiing. I don't want to drive up there. Mom and Ella aren't going. Let's go. Mom and Ella not going means we can make chili. Guy road trip with chili. Go yeah. Okay. Low conscientious sport, sorry. Okay. But I can plan meals out weeks in advance. Because how do I plan stuff out weeks in advance? I can think of not cause and effect now, I can think of future cause and effect. Because I have an older adult brain. How can my 14-year-old think of future cause and effect? No, not very well. There are future cause and effects sometimes work really well, but sometimes they don't think all the details through. How come they don't think all the details through? Because they're short-term. They don't necessarily understand. They don't have the knowledge of experience. Because it turns out in your temporal lobe, where language is, you also have your memories. Your left side, your left temporal lobe, stores all of your memories. They both store memories, but they both store different parts. Your left side has your history in it. There's your little baggage, your little wheelie suitcase is somewhere inside your temporal lobe. And what it does is it gives feedback to the prefrontal cortex. Your emotions in the temporal lobe give feedback to the prefrontal cortex. What kind of feedback do your emotions give you? What kind of feedback do the emotions give you? Well, not how to behave, but what motor program to choose. If you're producing an anxiety emotion, what does it tell you about which motor program to choose? Not to. It's called the behavioral inhibition system. The right side of your prefrontal cortex is the little thing that says, stop, don't. If you get like me, when I get really stressed, I don't know where to start. And I just walk around in circles. Like my wife says, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I'm just running around the house all over the place trying to start, and I can't seem to start anything. When you have a paper due and you can't write the first line, that is your right hemisphere's prefrontal cortex telling you, no, don't. Why would you have a right hemisphere tell you don't? So you don't do something wrong. Your left hemisphere's prefrontal cortex tells you to do things. Back in the old days, you used to have a little devil and angel pop on your shoulder. Yeah, it's probably where it came from. And so when Plato talked about the different divisions of the mind, you do have a division of the brain. The right side pays attention to the big picture of things, pays attention to the behavioral inhibitions. Stop. People who are depressed, what side is function? Inhibit or block? The anxiety is not blocked. It's running happily. The left hemisphere, left prefrontal cortex of people with depression is low activity. Yeah. Activation is left. Think about this. Your left hemisphere, left side is your past, present, and future. Left side is where we look for these cause and effect relationships. We look at the data from the past, we look at the data now, and we project into the future. Okay? Our right hemisphere sees the whole thing at once. So your right hemisphere gets the general impression from something. When you think something's funny, where does that come from? That's the right hemisphere thinks something's funny. It's your emotions. But the right hemisphere looks at the big picture and sees why something is funny. The left hemisphere focuses on the details and might miss the humor in a particular situation. Yeah. The emotions are in both, but the emotions of the whole thing are in the right. The emotions of the specific details are in the left. Do you notice one or the other? No, because what's connecting them? That huge bundle of white fiber is connecting them. Unless you have a split brain, which I can show you, I can send a video home for a split brain, so I don't have to have time to watch it, where they actually sever the corpus callosum. Some people with really bad epilepsy, they actually cut the corpus callosum, that big section, to prevent the seizures from spreading across the whole brain. And what happens is when you do that, the person can write with one hand and do something else with the other hand simultaneously. It's really easy. Yeah. The left one is we call it activation system. It is what promotes behavior. The right one is the inhibition system, which suppresses behavior. Doesn't stop it, suppresses. Remember, it's not a go or no-go situation. It's influence. Powers of control, if you will. Yeah.
I'm trying to connect this thing because I'm trying to follow you with this. Like for me, like when I get stressed out or when I'm really mad, I start laughing. So is that
Okay. No, yeah. So when I hurt myself really badly, I will laugh. And it's like, ow, this really hurts badly. Oh, this is a new pain. I've never experienced this much pain. And usually if it's some sort of, my favorite one is I was fixing a bicycle wheel. I'm holding the bike by the forks and I spin the front wheel and my finger got caught between the spoke and the frame. And just pinched it like between it hurts so bad. And it's like, it hurt so bad I actually almost passed out. I like tunnel vision, everything sounded like it was talking in metallic. It was awesome. It was like, whoa. And I was just sitting there, it hurt so bad, but I was laughing like, wow, it hurt so bad I almost passed out. And it's like, yeah. My son is funny the same way. Is that a personality thing or is that a brain thing? How could we figure that out? in order to figure that out, you'd have to stick someone in with the 148 electrode, glue them onto your head, make you upset about something, which is you gotta get that past the Human Use Committee. You're not supposed to cause harm during experiments, but make you pissed off. And then the problem when you get pissed off, what happens to your entire brain? It goes zigzaggy all over the place, and we couldn't see anything anyway. Oh. So it's really hard to test why, and this is why a lot of us, we look at this and go, but where am I in here? This is why the brain isn't the answer to the problems of psychology. Because where are you? Well, your left temporal lobe. That's where your history is. That's where your past is. And so depending on possibly genetics, could be personality from genetics, could be the way that your parents, when you hurt yourself as a kid, they would laugh so you didn't think it was so bad, so your brain learned that that's why, there's a million different reasons. There's all these little people standing in your past drawing you toward the way your behaviors are functioning now. And this is why Freud talked a lot about, and a lot of psychologists talk a lot about the influence of childhood behavior, because does it affect what you do? Yes, there's a direct connection. It's called the fornix. It goes directly between the temporal lobe and the prefrontal cortex that is the bridge of the emotions toward activation of behavior. And inhibition of behavior on the other side. Yeah. Right, and so that's so that's a conscious choice based on what it is. And so because there's a conscious choice based, is that consciousness here? Or is it consciousness in the temporal lobe? We don't really know. So it's like, this is the biggest problem with psychology, and it's the biggest problem with what we're going to talk about tomorrow, which is behaviorism stuff, is that you knowing the game changes the way you play the game. So as soon as you realize, and this is actually what a lot of therapy is for, as soon as you are aware of that stuff at the bottom of your suitcase, does that suitcase affect you? Yes, but differently as soon as you become aware of it. That's the problem, because where are you in here? There is a you in here, by the way. That if I anesthetize it, you don't think that you're yourself. No, believe it or not, if we can actually take out the prefrontal cortex, called a prefrontal lobotomy, and you still are you. The difference is you don't do anything because you can't plan. So you're still profoundly psychotic or depressed, but you're not doing anything about it. It's not a cure. It's a brain damage to prevent people being annoying. So it's like tranquilizer. It works really well. That person's not schizophrenic anymore. Oh, yeah, they are. Well, they're just sleeping all the time. Yeah, they're not a problem anymore. Good luck with that. Where would you be? Left side, yes. The temporal lobe is where your past, present, and future are, and your emotions are, and your memories are. But are your memories you? I'm just going to draw a little dot right here. On the right side, it's called the right temporal parietal junction. That's where you relate to other people. On the left temporal parietal junction, that's you, that's where you relate to yourself. The right side is you get the feeling of the general feeling of other people. That's why Rebecca Sachs said when you use this part of the brain, you make moral decisions from somebody else's perspective. Yeah. Okay, so there's a disorder called dissociative disorder. Okay, well, if you're born without the right temporal parietal junction, we talk about that as a lot of people with autism don't have this right temporal parietal junction. They can't think from someone else's perspective. So the left one, so you can have a dissociative event. Dissociative events are where, has anybody ever had like a really, it's a mean question to ask, but you have something really bad happen, and you go, this can't be happening, this isn't real, and it doesn't seem real. It's like you're from a third person watching this thing happen. Yes, that's because your brain is basically telling this part of your brain saying, you know what, just don't. Usually caused by a chemical called cortisol and endorphins. that the combination of the two just block realization. So the person doesn't feel real in that situation. That's actually a benefit if there's a lot of pain involved, because you just don't, it doesn't feel like it's you when it happens. I've crashed my bike a couple of times, and when I actually got knocked out, and I'm like, I'm kind of sitting there, and I'm like looking at making sure my bike's okay. My buddy goes, "You just need to sit down for a minute," because my face was smooshed. I didn't break, it just skidded on the frozen ground. That stung. Anyway, but how come I didn't really notice how bad my face was until I got home? Because, well, it's not that the adrenaline and everything else, I couldn't feel it, and it just felt like it was stinging a little bit. I didn't realize I had quite the road rash that I did on it. But, anyway. So the right parietal is how you judge others, the general impression of others. The left is how you feel about yourself. This is your self nucleus. If once you have a traumatic event, sometimes this gets inhibited. Anybody hear of what's called alien limb syndrome? All like the doctor shows do that occasionally. Like on Grey's Anatomy, guy was trying to cut off his foot with a chainsaw. It wasn't his foot.
Yeah.
Alien hand syndrome is a person feels like they're not in control of their hand. Well, that's where the sensory feedback doesn't match the planning, and as a result, they feel dissociated from a particular limb or something. It's a dissociative disorder. Somebody else had a question over here that, yeah. Yeah. And so that's what's cool is that if we anesthetize, so we can actually go in, I can't do this because I'll get in trouble, but doctors can anesthetize portions of the brain. All they do is put a little lidocaine on the neurons, and what happens to the neurons? They stop sending signals. So doctors can anesthetize a little part of the brain and then have people perform behaviors. Why on earth would we do this? Well, it's a little too dangerous just to see how things work. But usually if someone has their brain open for epilepsy surgery or any sort of brain surgery, the doctors will mess around a little bit they don't want to cut out a part that's important. And so they do little things to anesthetize or block certain areas so that they can figure out exactly what the functioning part is so they can cut out the parts that are damaged. Anyway, so I have a brain surgery video I can show you a little bit here about that. Yeah. Yeah. So women have thicker connections between their hemispheres than men. Humans can't multitask. They don't burn the food when they're watching the babies. Guys, we burn dinner when we're watching the babies. It's just... Yeah, and so my answer to that is that's practice. I don't think that has more to do with multitasking. I think it's practice. Because now that I've been a good dad I'm not calling myself a mom anymore. I was for a while, but my friends got upset by me, so I won't. And she's a sociologist, so I'm hip for Christine. Anyway, but because I've been a good dad, this morning, I can win 2 battles on Clash Royale and make breakfast this morning. I got to Lightning League on my phone, which thank you very much. Okay, anyway, I was one battle away, so I had to finish this morning. Anyway, I made breakfast, I made lunches, I made tea for myself. I got all the stuff together, started a load of laundry, ran the dishwasher, all within between getting home from working out and leaving the house at 7. I got just a ton of stuff done. And the reason is because I practice every morning. And so is it because I can set motor programs on autopilot? Once you set motor programs on autopilot, you're not multitasking. All I need is one little piece of stimulation, and I activate a motor program and continue that motor program on. I listen for when the eggs are done cooking. You can hear a change in the way that they sound. So that triggers my temporal lobe to activate, hey, pay attention to the eggs cooking. Or pay attention to the toaster, pay attention to the tea kettle. Okay, do you want to take a break? Yeah, just write your questions down. We'll take a break because I need to get something to drink. Pause. Is super good at deductive reasoning. In other words, we're going to look at everything that you're doing now, and then we go back and look at stuff and find cause and effect relationships in the past. it's really kind of fun. Like, there's some shenanigans at my wife's school, and so she has to go investigate to find out the true cause of said shenanigans between so-and-so and so-and-so on the playground. So-and-so hit me. Oh, yeah? Really? Okay. Why did they hit you? Because they're mean? Really? So I talked to 6 other people, said you were having a who can hit each other in the stomach harder contest, and you lost. Well, that's only part of it. He was doing it to be mean. Okay. And so the more people you talk to, do you come to the truth behind the consequences. But in psychology, we can look back and we can find people who are psychotic that have problems with their brain. We can go back and we can look at people with schizophrenia and notice that their brain is different. But can we find someone's brain and say, ooh, this person's going to get schizophrenia? No, because it turns out that your experience shapes your brain. The experiences that you have shape your brain. And the experience that you have shape the connections of your brain. So your brain gets shaped as it goes. Even your brain, if you've never been interested in psychology before, and then you take this class and all of a sudden you're like, wow, and you start paying attention to psychology, did we change the way your brain works? Yes. It'll come back on in a minute. Okay? And so by changing the way your brain works, does it change the way you see things? Yes. So every time you learn something new, you're changing your brain. You're changing the structure of your brain. And this is what's funny, is like when I learn something new, like I learned something new this summer, and it was a old Christian philosopher that did this really cool stuff. I haven't bothered to go look up the TED Talk to find out this guy's name, but the annoying part is, how come I can't remember who it is now, even though I talked about it last semester? I learn stuff new all the time. And the concept was what's important for the class at the time. Now, anyway, but I learned something new and it's exciting, but then it goes away. Where does it go? If it was in my memory, I'd be able to retrieve it. Well, it doesn't, if it's not used often, what happens to it as you get older? It fades away. And as things fade away in your life, this is really sad. A friend of mine's parent has really bad Alzheimer's. And they go, 20 years ago, her brother was killed driving up to Mammoth on the 395. Her brother was drinking and someone else was drinking and they had on collision. So it was stupid. Anyway, so in the middle of this, on their road, they go up to Mammoth every year at the same time. They just got back yesterday, and they always go they go snowshoeing and cross country skiing and go play in the snow. Pretty much, they don't like going to the downhill ski areas and stuff. They're just not that kind of people. So this year or last year, she's got bad Alzheimer's. The kids all got their skis, and she got her snowshoes, and her husband got her snowshoes, what they've been doing for 30 plus years, going up to Mammoth. And she goes, "Where are my skis?" And she goes, "Sue, you don't ski. You snowshoe because you don't like skiing." No, everybody else has got skis. Where are my skis? You didn't bring my skis. And starts getting mad at him that she didn't bring skis for him. Well, because she doesn't remember. Her memory is missing. So where is she filling it in with? What she's seeing right now. So being the good family, they rented her a pair of skis. How'd she do? Terrible. Cross-country skiing is hard. And she was just struggling all over the place, and she got really upset at everybody that they're not letting her ski, and they're making fun of her for not being able to ski because everybody's standing around being concerned that she's going to kill herself on her skis. And it kind of basically, she keeps, like, this year, this trip, she wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. Okay, it's time to go. I don't want to get up. We're going to go up to the mountains. I don't want to go to the mountains. Why would I want to go to the mountains? That was her on, Thursday morning when they were getting ready to go. And it's kind of sad because you realize, is that person still there? But their left hemisphere, their past, is fading away. And does your right hemisphere, the big picture, take evidence from the past to help you understand the big picture? So one part of the brain doesn't just cause one thing. all the parts of the brain cause behavior. And it's all mixed together and it's all intertwined. When I show you this video in a few minutes, you'll understand why. I wanted to show you, this is the inside of the brain. Okay, what's back here, just to remember? Occipital lobe, what do you do back here? You see. Okay, up here is parietal, and you feel. This is your, not feeling as far as emotions, but your body. So this is where you exist, because your body has a feeling, a representation in itself. Okay, there's an area inside right here. Okay? It's like a little tiny brain inside of the brain. And this is, you don't need to remember this for the test, but it's called the cingulate gyrus. This is your emotional behavior. So my emotional behavior is I tend to freeze when I get really stressed. Yay. Okay? So that's where your emotional behavior is. Some people get attacky when they get stressed. Some people get very defensive when they get stressed. This is your attack. This is this basic behavior. In a cat, this is where the behavior comes from. If you Google cats and cucumbers, one of my favorites, it's so funny. Just hours of entertainment, just watching cats being afraid of cucumbers. My favorite one is like the person put the cucumber inside the cat looks at it and goes, heh. Doesn't even flinch. Yes. Okay, but basically the cats respond the same way to being startled. Every cat responds the same way to being startled. What comes out? Well, the adrenaline, but what behavior comes out? Their claws come out. They jump, they arch their backs, their tail goes straight and fluffy. And they make the same annoying noise. Just be careful scaring cats. They will hurt you. Your own little fluffy house cat that you give lots of love and attention to will rip your eyeballs out if you scare it. I thought it was funny. My cat was sound asleep on the couch. I walked up and went, boo! Whoosh! And it got its claw caught in my eyelid. It was trying to gouge my eyes out. Here's Pogan, my wonderful cat that I rescued and took care of for years, was trying to kill me. Stupid cat. Anyway, when she passed, she died from kidney problems because she was extremely obese. When I went to work out, I used to work out, I still work out in the morning. I like getting up early, work out from 5 to 6. I get home at 6. I threw my workout towel on top of the cat, and I went and took a shower and then went to work. I came home at 3 o'clock in that afternoon. She's still sitting on the couch underneath my workout towel. She had not moved at all day. And she got up and stretched and moved to the other side of the couch in the sunbeam and sat down again and stayed there the rest of the night. Cat. So your entire caloric consumption today is walking from here to there. And the cat's like, yeah, that was a lot of work. Just. So how do you decide? So where's planning up here? Prefrontal cortex. It's called the orbital prefrontal cortex because it's literally right behind your eyeball. Okay? So is planning temporary or is it permanent? It's now. So what's cool about this is you can set plans in place, but there's some people that have something called impulse control. What is impulse control? Or not control your urges, depending if you have problems with impulse control. So it turns out that your motor programs are constantly being bombarded by your limbic system. Constantly. Hey, do this. Hey, do that. My leg is itchy for some reason right now, so I want to keep scratching my leg. I'm not sure why. There's a little red spot. I don't know why it's itchy. But I've got an itchy spot on my leg, so if I keep scratching at it, what'll happen? I already did that. That's why it's got a red spot on it. But is it going to get more itchy the more I scratch at it? Yes, we have a rogue batch of mosquitoes at our house right now that we haven't figured out where they're coming from. Man, they're angry. And they're thirsty. They really like my son. Anyway, so I probably got maunched by sleeping on the couch last night under by a mosquito, and that's why my leg is itchy. But if I keep scratching at it, it'll become itchier. Bless you. So can I control whether I scratch at it or not? Yes, I'm going to grit my teeth and not scratch at it. And so is there an impulse to scratch at it? Yes. So the impulse is coming up. The sensory nerves are activating the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is sending a signal down to my part of my brain called the hypothalamus, which is right here. The hypothalamus is right here. That is hormones. What is the hormone of itching? Itching? Histamine. Histamine. What do you take to prevent itching? Antihistamines. So it turns out that histamines, the neurotransmitter histamine, is released in the hypothalamus to make you pay attention. So what did you take an antihistamine? You sedated. You have a lack of attention. If you increase histamines, you pay a lot more attention. And now paying attention to where my edge of my sock is where my brain is trying to pay attention to now. It keeps bugging me. And the more I talk about it, what happens? The more it bugs me. Okay, I'd stop thinking about it for a couple seconds and it stopped itching, but now I'm thinking about it again, it's itching again. Yay! And what happens is that histamine, the hypothalamus, is your hormones. What else does the hypothalamus control? Hunger. What else? Thirst. Sex drive. Body temperature. All these basic hormonal behaviors. If we were a lot less brained, we would act on our hypothalamus. Dogs act on their hypothalamus. Will a dog eat when it's hungry? Yes. If it's not hungry, guess what happens? It doesn't eat unless you're feeding it. If you're eating, what will the dog want to do? Eat. If you're a little squishy, look at your dog. Oh. Because it eats when you eat. And it doesn't eat necessarily because it's hungry, it eats because it sees you eating, and the dogs are socially, they tend to eat when you eat. Every night we put a bowl of food out for our little white fluffy dog, and in the morning she'll have a bite, crunch, crunch, crunch. Every time someone comes to the house while she's sitting at the front door waiting, crunch, 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 she eats another piece of food or so. It's kind of a nervous habit. But then every night when we go for a walk, when she gets home from her walk, she drains her entire bowl. And then burps really loudly sitting on the couch. I got a video of it. It's really cute. If you pet her on the back, she's, oh. Good dog. Her face is all matted with food. But how come she doesn't eat all day? She's not hungry. Her food's always there. She only eats after she goes for a walk. That's her behavioral pattern. Do you ever see a fat coyote? No. Because they only work, unless you have one less cat, then they're slightly. But a coyote will catch a cat and eat most of it. How come they don't eat all of it? They don't need any more. So they just leave a chunk for you to remind you, don't leave your cats out. There you go. So the hypothalamus in humans is directly connected to the lower parts of our brain. And these are what we call homeostatic things. What does homeostatic things mean? Balance. They are balance, homeostatic balances. And then your hypothalamus keeps track of these homeostatic balances. Now the problem is things like hunger and thirst. They don't change, they're not the same all the time. In the wintertime, I always get more hungry. I get less thirsty. In the summertime, I drink significantly more water and eat significantly less food. Why? It's nothing to do with the temperature. It's yeah. It's with swimsuit season. No, it just has to do with my activity levels. When I'm not teaching, I am busy all day. Like when we go up to the mountains in the summertime, I get up right before sunrise. I go fishing until about 9 o'clock. Come back home, make breakfast for everybody. We go do some family adventure all day. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we all get back to the house. I go out fishing again until sunset. Come back home, make dinner, and then go to sleep, and then get up and start the next day again. And it's like that's summer. And so I tend to drink a ton of water because I'm very active. This time of year, I'll work out in the morning, and maybe get a workout in this evening on my bicycle if it's not too cold. But if you want a study guide, I'll sit in the car. But at the same time, is that I'm just not that thirsty. But why am I hungry? Because I'm at home. And if I'm at home, what do we have? Food, snacks. Yeah, and that's a stupid part of your brain called the preoptic area, which I'll write up here because I don't need you one to know it. But the preoptic area triggers your hypothalamus by seeing stuff. You see all the water bottles and coffee cups around. All of a sudden you're... I can easily trigger histamine responses. Right off the bat. See?
Is that what
Yeah. So what that does is that the preoptic area pays... See, that was a good one. You're an easy score. The preoptic area just pays attention to these homeostatic balances. And if you have any sort of homeostatic pressure that's not set... Nice. That was a real deep one. I can easily prime it. Prime. I can prime it with your hypothalamus. The hypothalamus doesn't really control behaviors in humans, but is this where primes come from? Yes. That's at the edge of the screen. Okay, you can definitely prime things with the hypothalamus. And this, so when you're hungry, what do you start to do? Think about food, look about, don't even get to thinking yet. We haven't got the thinking part of the brain yet. Okay, so right above the thalamus, hypothalamus is called the thalamus. Right above the hypo means low, hypoglycemia is low blood sugar. That's the thalamus. Let's write a T on it. So the thalamus is right in the center of the brain. All sensations go through here with an asterisk of smell. So smell is unique as a sense in your brain. Where does smell go into your brain? Yeah, so you go, how does it get into your brain though? They're called olfactory cells. Remember, olfactory stinks. Easy to remember. Okay? But the olfactory cells go directly into the cortex. The nose nerves are right on the bottom of the orbital prefrontal cortex. So your smell goes directly into your planning. It's really important. If you smell, like my wife was wearing this really nice perfume this morning, like, wow, you smell good. And she looks at me, do you brush your teeth? Oh, sorry. Okay, so does that change your planning? Someone saw some geek stink breath versus good perfume. It immediately changes your mood. So it's funny, one of my students, the older Chaldean woman, she goes, oh, my husband expects me to make dinner every night. And sometimes I don't want to. So she comes home and she takes an onion, chops it up, throws a garlic clove in a skillet, dumps some olive oil on it, and turns the heat on the stove. He walks in and goes, thank you. She has no idea what she's going to cook for dinner. But what does she do? She activates his olfactory bulb and he comes home and he's happy and satisfied. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to make. I'm just going to, why the cooking of garlic and onions? It releases a chemical called butyric acid. Butyric acid is the stomach digestion juices. When you get too much butyric acid, it smells like barf. But just a little teeny bit, it smells like fresh cooking onions or fresh cooking garlic. Anybody ever smell a rotten onion or a rotten piece of garlic? It's probably one of the more gnarly, nasty things you've ever smelled. Remember, we worked at a pizza place and the bottom of the bag of onions had gotten damp. And so we went to reach in to grab an onion, went, oh, somewhere between dog poo and barf. Really special. Excellent smell. What does it do for your hunger? Dissipates it very quickly. I'm done eating right now. Okay, so it's interesting, but so smell goes to the thalamus after it goes to the cortex. So your taste sensations go up through your spinal cord, they go up through your lower part of your brain, into the thalamus, and that's where you taste flavors. How many different tastes do we have? 5. We have sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Umami. Protein. Tastes like chicken. That's umami. Monosodium glutamate, MSG, tastes like chicken. So if you don't have a lot of money, you put animal fat, like chicken fat, and MSG together, and what does it taste like? Chicken broth. It's called ramen. Yeah. It's dehydrated chicken fat and MSG, and you put it on wheat noodles. And my daughter had a packet of ramen yesterday because she snuck it in the cart when we were shopping. We don't call that's not food at our house. It's yummy, but it's not. Why is it yummy? It's engineered to be salty and fatty and sweet. What's the sweet? Not really sweet, but carby. The noodles, sugar, fat, and salt. It's a perfect food for our brains. Has any nutritional value whatsoever? No. Sugar, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami. Yeah, and what's cool about those is that if you just have the taste without smell, food tastes very bland. American food is very over-salted. I don't use salt at all when I cook, except with red meat, because red meat, you add a little salt and it helps bring the moisture out. But I generally don't add salt too much, because I like the way food tastes. And with the way food, if you learn how food actually tastes, food tastes better without all the salt. But what are Americans used to? Super salty, probably because we're all immigrated here with freaking boats at some point in our cultural past. And on a boat, what do you do with everything? Salt the crap out of it so it doesn't rot. Anyway, so let's see. So why would the thalamus be right in the center of the brain? It's not the pleasure center. I'm going to draw with color. I'm going to put the pleasure centers in this pretty pink color. Pleasure centers are right here. Called the nucleus accumbens. Oh, a little smeshy at the top. Called the nucleus accumbens. This is the feel-good part of your brain. It's right below the thalamus. It's right by the hypothalamus. Well, it sends signals down into your spinal cord and sends signals up into the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of the brain that says, do it. It's the reward part of your brain. So when they were looking at the dogs and said that the reward centers of the brain lit up in response to the handler making the yes hot dog sound, or hand sign, the dog's nucleus accumbens lit up. In the dog, it's called the ventral tegmental pathway, but we call it the nucleus accumbens. It's a part of this activating system that tells you to do things. So when something is rewarding, somebody mentioned this last time. What's a neurotransmitter released? Yeah. Dopamine. Neurotransmitter is dopamine. It's the neurotransmitter of reward. So if you smell something and it smells good and you eat it and it tastes like it should, your dopamine systems go, yes. Anybody eaten at De Leone's? It's a little Italian restaurant down here. But back in the 90s, it was family owned and operated, and it was awesome. We used to go there on Tuesdays for eggplant. It was epic. My wife lived right across the street down on Casa de something. Not Casa de Oro. It was... I can't remember now. It's Casa de Oro, and that's that way. It's just over there. And so we used to walk from her house when we were dating and walk down there and have food, and it was wonderful. And they sold the restaurant, and new owners bought it. We went in, they sold the same specials, we sat down, it was completely disgusting. Why was it disgusting? It didn't match what we were expecting. And they were using different sauce, they were using different stuff, same kitchen, same restaurant, same menu, different, bad. And the old owners finally bought it back from the new owners because so many people were complaining. And it was cool because we went back after the new owners had bought it, and it was back to the way it should have been. In other words, same old recipes. And that's why, because when the information all lines up, what does it make you feel? Good. It makes you feel happy. So people like these cause and effect relationships where they can predict outcomes. When you make a correct prediction, how do you feel? Good. Ah. But what's interesting is that anticipation of the correct prediction is what leads to conspiracy theories and all these other crazy things that people get into, because why do we like looking for these really complicated cause and effect relationships? The bigger the reward. When you figure something out, the reward is much higher. My favorite thing is figuring something out that I've already figured out. And I've forgotten that I figured it out already, and I figured it out again. I still get the same reward. Like, my wife's sink was clogged, and I had to fix the sink. And I remember I've been putting it off for a long time because I didn't want to fix it, because it's gross when you pull a big wad of hair out of a sink. Ugh. And so I had to take the trap off the bottom, and as soon as I started taking the trap off, I'm like, oh, crap. I remembered that the last time I took it off, 10 years ago probably, I couldn't get it back on. And it's 10 years of old rusty pipe more now than it was then. Flex tape, no. I was tempted to go buy some flex tape because that would have worked great. Just wrap that whole thing in flex tape, leave it another 10 years, be good. No, but what's funny is that I went out to the garage to get the tool that I needed to fix it, and right next to the tool that I needed to fix it, the last time I used the stupid under sink wrench, there's a tube of this called pipe compound, glue. I'm like, stoke. I just remembered how I'm going to fix this. Just get it on enough and glue it around. Held for 10 years before. It's still not dripping. Ooh, I should check that today. Yeah. But again, so that is your memory help you with the reward? So what is rewarding to you is learned, not just automatic. It's learned. Whew. Okay, so we've got the thalamus. All of your sensations are going through here. All your sensations. Smell just going through a slightly different pathway, but it's getting them. As, this is the key word. I'm going to write it with the same color as the thalamus. This is the part that makes the brain hard to understand. As you are seeing something, what's your hypothalamus doing? Reacting to it. As you are feeling something, your hypothalamus is reacting to it. And so this is what you're talking about with this, we talked about this before with the snake. That humans notice snakes. I would like to see if that would work for people who grew up in countries that don't have snakes. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to do that experiment. It'd be really cool. But what's interesting is that if you see a snake, it doesn't for me, it activates my reward centers because I like snakes. But what if you're afraid of snakes? It's going to activate the amygdala, which I'll make in this pretty purple color. Do you notice that the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens are right next to each other? They compete for attention, just like spoiled siblings competing for the attention of the prefrontal cortex. Yeah. Yeah. Well, sort of. Fight or flight is down here. But guess who directly talks to down here? The amygdala. The medulla is down here. Medulla oblongata. Okay, it's really not what it's for. That should have said amygdaloid complex, but it's not nearly as funny as medulla oblongata. Okay, so here's your amygdala. Let me write that.
Since you can't see it, you're not able to smell it.
Well, so a blind taste test means that I don't know if I make coffee for you. Some friends came over for a Christmas party, and I made coffee. And I'm a coffee snob. I apologize in advance, but I'm into medium roast right now. I'm usually a really dark roast person, but I'm in medium roast right now. So I had some really nice medium roast coffee, and I made it for some of my friends. I go, this is the best coffee she's ever had. Now, is it because of the coffee that I was using, or was it the whole situation? It's probably the whole situation. If she sat down and done an official coffee cupping is where you actually, my behaviors in class next semester, we do a coffee cupping where you get to taste 10 different types of coffee and learn to taste the different types of coffee that there are and get all crazy jittery by the end of class. It's awesome. Anyway, but if you taste it, if you're having a fun time at the party, everything is great, and you have a cup of coffee and it's not bad, you say, wow, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had. Because does the flavor get impacted by all the sensations coming in? Yes. Some of my favorite coffee has been crap diner coffee. You know, you go to like the Guineas and the thick, really thick, heavy porcelain cup and like with real cream in it. And it's just fun to have, you know, drink 67 or 70 cups of that stuff. Well, chain smoking, no. Okay, so the amygdala, okay, getting back. The amygdala is what triggers your medulla to activate the fight or flight. So the amygdala is competing for the prefrontal cortex is, hey, pay attention to me. The nucleus accumbens is saying, reward, do it. What is the amygdala saying? Stop. That's what it's saying. Yeah. Again, I don't have to look at latent inhibition. I hate scary. I don't think mind things that are scary. I don't like torture. So my wife's been watching Scandal, the torture show. I watched like 1 or 2 episodes with her until somebody was being waterboarded. I'm like, I'm out. Ew. I like cutting off toes. The creepy guy hucked there. And let's pull out a few teeth. Can we do that? Do we have time to pull out at least one tooth? Just one. Like, yeah. No! I don't watch Game of Thrones. I don't watch anything yucky. I watch kids' movies. Yay! Inside Out. Too stressful. Okay, yeah. So vision goes through the hypothalamus, to the thalamus, to the occipital lobe. As the occipital lobe is seeing what it is, your hypothalamus is already reacting to it. So going back to the snake, what we started with the amygdala, when you see a snaky-like object on the ground, your amygdala is going, quick, it's a snake. You look at it. Why would your attention be drawn to it before you even realize what it is? So you can react to if it is a snake. So your hypothalamus is constantly just searching for everything. If you happen to have a little extra testosterone and you're a little horny, somebody walks by and you go, female. Sorry, what? Why do you notice? Because your hypothalamus is like the preoptic area, your hypothalamus saying, oh, I like that. Oh, sorry. And it's just what happens. It's when you comment on it and they go, hey, ooh, then it's sexual harassment. Yeah.
Is that why like almost like restaurant chains like McDonald's are like red and yellow and have like the signs that like
but those are conditioned stimuli. Those are stimuli that the reason why if you go to McDonald's pretty much anywhere, it tastes very similar. And the same thing as Starbucks. They have barista Nazis go around and make sure their coffee is being made properly. Took a long time for Starbucks to franchise their restaurants because the coffee had to be made a certain way. They finally let the airports first make their own coffee because they don't want someone to go to Starbucks and get a crap cup of coffee. They want it to taste the way a Starbucks cup of coffee is supposed to taste. And so the reason is because when you go to one of those places, what do you expect? The expectations matches the reality and people are satisfied because you don't necessarily get a huge dopamine rush, but you feel satisfied. If you're left feeling anxious, is that a good experience? No, because if you look at a lot of the kind of restaurants that my wife and I go to they have to make food that's better than we can cook at home. Because I'm a pretty good cook. I make lots of different foods. And I hate going and paying money for food that's not as good as stuff that we can make at home. We went to a restaurant up in Mammoth and we had a trout and it was dry and Like, when we catch a trout and we cook it, it's good. And when you get one at a restaurant, you expect it to be better than you can get at home. And if it's not as good as we can make at home, it's not satisfying to me. And I don't eat fast food. I refuse to eat that kind of stuff. Just because I can make better at home and it's not satisfying for me to eat on a road trip eating a Taco Bell taco or Taco Bell burrito. That's fine because you're expecting it to be nasty and it's nasty and you're like, yeah, it was awesomely nasty. But that's not really food. That is just being bored. It's only so many sunflowers you can eat. Sunflower seeds, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you're drooling. Well, that all actually occurs down here. Your cerebellum. So if you see food, like if I was trying to think of okay, my son had the cold that I have. I hope I don't drain like he does, but he's got my family sinuses, and then we drain a lot when we're sick, and so he's like blowing his nose constantly. And during basketball, he sneezed during basketball practice yesterday and had a nose explosion. And he's like, "Gah!" And everybody goes, "Oh!" And he just goes to the bathroom, wipes his face off. If you're about to take a bite of your hamburger and someone has a nose explosion, yeah. Sorry, you visual imaged that, didn't you? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, what happens is your amygdala tells your medulla, you're done eating. That's it. That's all we need. I'm done. Okay? Or, if you have sensitive disgust ratios, people that are very sensitive to disgust emotions, things that are disgusting suppress feeding very quickly. If you have no disgust emotions, you don't care. My wife has a pair of socks she got for Christmas. As a principal, they're very important to have. It says, "Hi, I don't care. Sorry." I get the Melania Trump jacket, or whatever it was. But it's nice on your sock, because is that important to have, to remember? A kid comes running and goes, "So-and-so stole my pencil on the playground." Oh, okay. You walk away. Seriously, I don't care. Because should you care about every single little thing? No. So sometimes it's good to say, "I don't care." They're going to laugh at you. I don't care. It's good. It's nice. Okay. So, she won't wear them to work, though. Okay. You bring them all break up. Okay. So, the amygdala is constantly activating the medulla, telling you, stop, wait, freeze, panic. It's seeing things because it's connected to the thalamus, it's seeing things as you are perceiving them. So your emotions are seeing it as you are perceiving it. Can it change your behavior without you even being conscious of it? Yes, because it can connect to the cerebellum on its way to the medulla and change behavior in response to it. A lot of sports athletes, you put a whammy on them. What does that mean when you put a whammy on somebody? Oh, come on, you got to know this. The kid's up to bat, shoes untied. You get them to shift their motor program to something else. And when they shift the motor program to something else, what happens? They don't do as well. And we do this to our friends all the time. When you're competing against your friends in non-important sporting events. It's pretty much every time we compete. But it's like when you're racing someone up on a bicycle up a hill. When you get to the top of the hill, it's really important to sprint at the top of the hill. Why? The other person's really tired and sees you take off on the top of the hill, and they say, "Wow, I'm really tired. I don't think I could sprint." You're blowing your lungs out sprinting at the top of the hill. Just to let them know that you still have gas. And what it is, it's a moral thing. Or Marco Bentani used to just look in the eyes of people when he passed them to watch them suffer. He'd drive up past them and stare them in the eyes to see if they're suffering. And if the more they're suffering, the more he smiled, he would ride faster away from them. Because demoralize and get inside their head and demoralize and change their motor programs. He also committed suicide alone in a hotel room because he got tested positive using drugs. But that's not important. Okay, it's really sad. It's a really sad story. Okay, so, is this a lot of brain? Yeah, and we're just barely touching the surface of this. For each one of these parts that we're talking about, it's like a whole week in my physio-psych course that we talk about how each one of these little tiny parts interact with other things. We spend 4 classes on the hypothalamus alone. Okay, so when we look at this, you're not going to be able to understand it as an intro student. But what I want you to think about is the feedback that it gives. I want to draw one more important part on here. Let me see if I can find a good color that I haven't done green. Okay, and I want you to think about this as kind of 3-dimensional. because it's inside the temporal lobe, so it's not really in the center of the brain like it looks like it's here. Okay? It's inside the temporal lobe like this, inside here, on either side. It's called the hippocampus. Okay, and the hippocampus is your memory. So the hippocampus starts at the amygdala, runs past the nucleus accumbens, and then arcs up around the corpus callosum. So what's crazy about the hippocampus is it keeps track of what stimuli you have seen in the past. Again, that's 2 more lectures in physio to explain how the hippocampus works. So you just have to accept it in this class. But what it does is, as you are seeing things, the hippocampus is paying attention to everything that's happening. What you see, where, when, how, and who, is all being stored as it's happening. What if nothing interesting happens at that particular second? It goes away. If nothing important happens, it goes away. If nothing important happens, it goes away. I activate the amygdala, and all of a sudden, flash. What happens gets stored. If I activate the nucleus accumbens, what happens gets stored. What do we activate more, though? Amygdala or nucleus accumbens? Amygdala. Stupid amygdala. Afraid of everything. So what do you remember most? Bad stuff. Your hypothalamus releases a chemical called adrenaline. Well, this is a pre-cascading process, but for now, the hypothalamus does it. It's called ACTHRS, technically. Anyway, but the adrenaline chemical that the cortisol that hypothalamus eventually releases, it goes to the pituitary goes to the kidney releases it to the blood affects the eye. Okay. Hypothalamus gets stressed about something. What does that do to your memory? Strengthens it. Makes it remember at full speed. What happens if you have chronic stress? What happens to your memory? Overloads and starts decreasing memory. Huge doses of stress can block memory. Drop your pen. Huge doses of cortisol can block memory. Huge doses of cortisol can cause a flashbulb memory. Flashbulb memory is where you close your eyes, immediately the scene is back. Can be wonderful like a wedding proposal or awful like a post-traumatic stress disorder. Or wedding proposal is a post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Haha. Choose. That's almost, it's insinuating it has context. A consciousness. The hippocampus is an index of memory. It's an index. So if I activate a memory, the memory will then activate my occipital lobe, parietal lobe, and frontal lobe as that situation unfolded in reality. So if I look at your brain imaging, well, as opposed to me saying it, let's watch somebody showing it in a video. Can't click on the icons on the picture, dumbass. I know. Oh, not there. There.